I didn't feel joyful. I was scared. I was afraid. And it wasn't anxiety. They were like panic attacks,
Yeah.
which are different.
Goldie Hawn has spent decades being one of the most beloved faces in Hollywood. That laugh, that brightness, that energy that made you feel like everything was going to be okay. It became her trademark. People called her America's sweetheart. They saw the joy and assumed it was the whole story. But behind every perfect smile, there is usually a longer and more complicated story, and Goldie's is no different. Now, at 79, she is finally letting people in on what was really happening behind the scenes, and the names she is revealing will genuinely surprise you. 6 men, 6 moments, 6 reasons why Goldie Hawn quietly decided she had better things to do than put up with any of them ever again. Before we get into all of it, if you love hearing the real stories behind Hollywood's biggest names, the ones that never made it into the magazines and never showed up in the press junkets, then please subscribe and hit the bell right now. Every week, we go deeper into the stories that actually shaped this industry, and you will not want to miss what is coming next. Now, let's talk about Goldie. The first name on her list is one that will not surprise anyone who has followed Hollywood long enough to hear the stories. Bill Murray has a reputation that precedes him everywhere he goes. He is brilliant, unpredictable, and completely unwilling to follow anyone else's rules. For some people, that quality is exciting. For Goldie Hawn, it was the beginning and the end of any possibility of working together. The incident that sealed it happened during a table read for a studio comedy in the late 1980s. On paper, putting these two together made complete sense. Goldie was warm, funny, and effortlessly likable. Murray was comedy royalty. The studio must have thought they were sitting on gold. What actually happened in that room was something else entirely. Murray arrived an hour late. He was loud and disheveled and showed absolutely no interest in apologizing for any of it. He dropped his coffee cup onto the script pages and announced to the room that now they could begin. Goldie sat quietly and watched this happen. She already knew, in the way that experienced people tend to know, that the afternoon was not going to go well. She started the reading and delivered her lines with the warmth and timing she had spent years perfecting. Murray interrupted her mid-scene, smirking, and told her in front of everyone that she might want to try acting like she had done drama before. The men in the room laughed. Goldie did not. She closed her script, stood up, and walked out without saying a single word. That silence was its own kind of statement. By the next morning, her team had already contacted the producers. Goldie was out. No explanation offered, no drama, no lengthy statement. She simply removed herself from the situation and moved on. She told a friend later that she found his style of unpredictability exhausting, that he confused cruelty with creativity, and that she had no interest in untangling the difference. From that point forward, she restructured how she worked. She stopped tolerating chaos dressed up as genius. When his name came up in later years in connection with possible projects, her answer was simple and final. No interest. The second name on her list is someone whose behavior toward Goldie was not just unpleasant, but deliberately damaging. Warren Beatty was, for a long stretch Hollywood history, one of the most powerful and charming men in the entire industry. He was also someone who was not used to hearing the word no, and when Goldie said it, he made sure she paid a price for it. In the late 1970s, Beatty was at the height of his influence and his confidence. He decided he wanted Goldie in his orbit, and he pursued that in the way he pursued most things, through invitation, through access, through the slow escalation of attention that he was famous for. Goldie was polite, she was warm, and she was completely clear. She was not interested. That should have been the end of it. Instead, it was the beginning of something much worse. Almost immediately, things in Goldie's professional world started to shift in ways that were hard to pin down but impossible to ignore. Scripts she had been told were heading her way stopped materializing. Directors who had been enthusiastic suddenly became unavailable. One producer took the time to warn her privately that Warren had been telling people she was difficult, that she was not serious material. There was no shouting match, no confrontation, no moment she could point to and say, "This is what he did." It was quieter than that, and quieter things are often harder to fight. Goldie understood exactly what was happening. She told someone close to her that he didn't handle rejection, he punished it, and that was precisely what he was doing. His influence spread across so much of the industry at that point that a whisper from him in the right room could close doors that had nothing to do with talent. She never confronted him publicly. She understood that confronting someone with that much power usually only makes the situation worse.
But fate has a way of providing its own moments of clarity. Years later, at an awards show, they ended up face to face. Beatty came toward her smiling like the past had never happened, like everything between them was warm and uncomplicated. Goldie looked him straight in the eye, gave him a perfectly polished, perfectly empty smile, and turned her back on him mid-sentence. That single gesture said everything she had never said out loud. She didn't need a speech, she just needed that one moment. The third name surprised people more than almost any of the others, because this person carries a reputation that most of the industry has always treated as untouchable. Dustin Hoffman is widely considered one of the greatest actors of his generation. His work is studied, celebrated, and treated with a level of reverence that does not get extended to many people. For Goldie Hawn, he was the man who humiliated her in front of a room full of people, and then apparently expected her to be grateful for the feedback. This happened in the early 1980s, when Goldie was actively trying to move her career in a more dramatic direction. She had proven, over and over again, that she could make audiences laugh. She wanted the chance to show them something different. When she was invited to read opposite Hoffman for a prestigious dramatic project, she prepared seriously. She arrived ready. She believed in what she was doing. They were halfway through the reading when Hoffman stopped. He looked at her without warmth and then turned to the producers and announced in front of everyone that she was still playing it like a sitcom. Those words landed exactly the way he must have known they would. Goldie did not crumble. She finished the scene with precision and composure, thanked everyone in the room, and walked out before anyone could say another word. The following morning, she called her agent and told them she was out and that she was not going to fight for basic respect in a room full of men who had already decided she was a joke before she opened her mouth. She never worked with Hoffman after that. When she spoke about the experience later, she said simply that some men forget they are not directing the women around them. It is a quietly devastating observation, and it explained everything that had happened in that room. Hoffman believed he had exposed a limitation. What he actually exposed was his own arrogance, and Goldie simply walked away from it. The fourth name brings us to someone who, like Goldie, built his career on comedy, which made the clash between them all the more complicated. Chevy Chase was at the peak of his fame when the two of them were cast together in Foul Play in 1978. From the outside, it looked like the kind of pairing that generates genuine chemistry on screen. From the inside, it was a slow, grinding experience that left Goldie completely done with him by the time filming wrapped. Chase arrived on set with the energy of someone who believed his presence alone was the main event. He questioned lines, rewrote jokes, and disrupted scenes in ways that threw everyone off balance. When a moment worked better for Goldie than for him, when she got the bigger laugh or the stronger reaction, he would mutter under his breath that she was lucky to be there. If something didn't go his way, he would sulk for hours, and on at least one occasion, he walked off set entirely and refused to return until the director made changes to accommodate him. Goldie handled all of this the way she handled most difficult things, with warmth, with humor, with an effort to smooth things over and keep the peace. But the effort wore her down. She told her stylist one evening after another round of Chase's behavior that he was simply mean when the camera stopped rolling. Not difficult, not eccentric, mean. The film came out, it did well, and the studio wanted to move straight into a sequel. They put serious money on the table. Goldie did not need time to think about it. She told her agent she was not interested, and that was the end of that. The fifth name takes us into territory that is less about what happened on a film set and more about what happened in a very public room where Goldie had every right to be treated with dignity. Sean Penn has a reputation for intensity and directness that some people find admirable. What he did at a charity event in 2014 was neither intense nor direct. It was just unkind. Goldie had been invited to speak at a Malibu gala about mental health, a subject she had spent years taking seriously and speaking about thoughtfully. She took the stage and the room went quiet. From his table, Penn sighed audibly and rolled his eyes and said loudly enough for people nearby to hear that it was another celebrity wellness sermon. Goldie gave her speech. The room responded warmly, and then Penn delivered the line that she has never forgotten. He leaned back in his chair, smirked, and said she should stick to giggling.
She did not respond to him in the room. She smiled, raised her glass, and left early. In the car on the way home, she finally let herself feel it. Her whole career, she said, and she was still being reduced to giggles. That was the moment something shifted permanently. She decided that she would not attend any event where his name was on the guest list. She was not angry about it in the way that burns and takes up space. She was simply finished. When his name came up in later conversations, she did not flinch, did not elaborate. "Not my energy," she said, and meant it completely. The sixth and final name is the one that perhaps cuts deepest, because it did not come from a rival or someone she had ever clashed with professionally. It came from a man the entire industry considered a legend, someone whose status was so secure that he probably never thought twice about how he treated the people around him. Kirk Douglas was Hollywood royalty, and he behaved at an industry panel in the late 1990s in a way that reminded Goldie very clearly of exactly how some man in that world still saw her, regardless of what she had achieved. She was there as an Oscar-winning actress and a working producer. Douglas greeted her with a big smile, kissed her hand, and told her she hadn't aged a day. The crowd found it charming. Goldie smiled because that is what you do. But then as the panel got underway, he interrupted her. And then he interrupted her again, and then a third time, each time steering the conversation back to himself, finishing her thoughts before she could finish them, using every pause as a chance to reassert that he was the most important person in the room. The moderator noticed. People in the audience noticed. Goldie went from engaged and warm to still and quiet in a way that anyone watching closely could read. Afterward, she told a friend that Kirk Douglas talked to her like she was still the blonde in a bikini scene, and that she had won an Oscar. That contrast was the whole story. She remained warm toward his son Michael, who she spoke of consistently as someone who treated the people around him with genuine respect, but she never spoke about Kirk Douglas again in any meaningful way. "Some men," she said quietly at some point after, "don't deserve a second act in your memory." And that detail is perhaps the most telling thing of all. Kirk Douglas never knew he was on her list. He went through the rest of his life probably thinking that interaction had gone perfectly well, that Goldie Hawn had enjoyed his company and found him charming. He never knew that his behavior that afternoon had placed him permanently in the part of her mind she had decided to leave behind. What connects all 6 of these stories is not bitterness. It is not even really anger. It is something simpler and more powerful than both of those things. Goldie Hawn spent her entire career being underestimated, being interrupted, being told in various ways that the thing she was known for, that warmth, that laughter, that light, was all she was good for. Every single one of these men, in their own way, made the mistake of believing that. And every single time, she responded the same way. She finished what she was doing, she held her head up, and she walked away. Behind that perfect smile was a woman who was keeping count, not out of spite, but out of self-respect, and it turns out the two are very different things. If you made it to the end of this one, thank you. Drop a comment telling us which of these 6 stories surprised you the most, and don't forget to subscribe if you haven't already. There's a lot more coming, and you won't want to miss it.